Your city, your sound, Newport City Radio.
I'm joined by Stephen Marshall, who is a community activist representing young people in Wales and UK. And I'm joined by Elle, who is a political commentator and tech editor. And today we're going to be debating stuff. Well, specifically EU stuff. If we should stay in or should I stay or should I go? No.
You've been wanting to use that all day.
Should I stay or should I go? Okay, so I've broken this sort of debate into three parts: economy, immigration, and jobs. Alright, so we'll start with economy. Elle, a lot of people who want to leave are worried that trade will be affected if we do leave. At the moment, we don't pay any tariffs for imports and exports. Also, Sky News say that more than 50% of our exports go to the EU countries. What would you say to that?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that we don't even break even on the membership. And the thing with the tariffs is that they benefit us more if we're actually exporting more than what we are at the moment. We are taking in a lot of imports at the moment, and we currently make up 8% of the EU's revenue. And for, countries in the EU, for example, Germany, France, they suddenly say, well, we're not going to trade with you anymore because we're not in this trade agreement. On all levels, it's hyperbolic to kind of say that they'll suddenly stop. I mean, for example, Merkel has even said that she wants to make a new agreement between Germany and Britain if it is Brexit that we choose. I think the main thing that, with the money in and out, is that we can invest the money that's actually going into the EU at the moment and put it into ourselves. Because, like Australia, we want to be self-sufficient. We want to be more tradey based, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Want to be able to, instead of everything being about services, about hotels, taxis, waitering, we want things to be more for entrepreneurs, more for enterprise, and actually investing money into the smaller and medium businesses, which we've lost, especially in this city, Newport.
Okay, so what do you say to that, Steve? Do you think there'll be a tariff if we leave?
Personally, I believe there would be. There's situations like Norway, which have kind of dibbled in, dibbled out kind of thing. And I seriously think that because we'll be outside of the EU regulations, and also that belongs part of the economy. And I strongly feel as part of that, we wouldn't have access to that 500 million people there, which will be, disastrous, I think, to our economy. I don't think, as mentioned, that we could be self-sufficient. In an ideal world, we'd love to, but in equation, we have to trade. As a country, we have to trade. There's spices, things like that, bananas. You're not going to grow them in the UK, let's face it. So I think that as a whole, we should trade. And I think as a whole that the EU has actually protected us in a lot of ways. Right. So looking at the monopolies of like Microsoft, for example, or Facebook, things like that. Yeah. Looking at privacy, selling information. And I think that's a big thing as well, because I'm bringing privacy into the economy side of things because we don't want our data sold. Right. And it's very personal, and I think something like the EU is very, very good in order to stand up against the big monopolies that individual countries cannot. Yeah. And on the kind of going back to the tariffs, I think as a whole, I think the UK would, be extremely harmful, especially to the Republic of Ireland, our closest trading partner, and the one that we actually trade with day in, day out from north to south of the border. And I bring in another thing that sadly no one's actually mentioned about is Gibraltar. Right. Which obviously is the Rock of Spain. What position and their economy do they have? There's 35,000 people in Gibraltar that would be hugely affected by, these tariffs, stronger border control, and that's obviously a different issue for now. But it's the factor is there's so much things there that we need to really contemplate. It's not just the island of the UK. There's such a bigger implication of that and where we are in the economy. Still, more things like that. I can go into a lot more facts than that if you wish, but I'll leave it there for now.
Yeah, okay. Security is something that I haven't heard a lot of, to be honest. I suppose that comes into the human rights, does it?
In terms of privacy, it does come under human rights, the right to basically a private life, that you can go around and expect that when you close your door, that's it, essentially, that people shouldn't be prying in, seeing what you have for breakfast and TV and things like that. But that also goes to your online presence as well, that you should be able to have a say in basically, what you put on, who can see it, who can't, things like that, without the fact it can be sold out to other people.
Would we still be able to protect privacy if we leave?
I think personally we could, but I don't think it would be as strong.
Right.
Now, because the problem is with the internet, as you probably imagine, there's certain bases across the world. UK is not one of them, the Republic of Ireland is. So we can use, as member states of the European Union, the ability to lean and say, actually, can we do something as a European Union and legislate as such a big area? And we have done. There's certain things that has been done, and Facebook, Microsoft, I use the two examples that are well known, to the European Court, and using Ireland as the example on this, because the Information Commissioner Office over there has actually brought them and fined them for doing such things, because they're based actually in the Republic for the European bases.
All right, what do you have to say to that, Al?
I think the main one is probably privacy, because when it comes to privacy, we know that the US and China are actually part of a TPP agreement, which also goes against privacy, as does the TTIP. And the TTIP is something that is going to be brought in with the EU. And the problem with the TTIP is that it doesn't... There's also problems with things like businesses being able to sue the government for loss of profits and things like that. But the main thing about privacy is that they are able to watch what we're doing online. Say, for example, things like food. Say that we're looking at things online, our security online, our data online, it's in jeopardy because they're able to look at things because they may be asked to monitor these certain things. As for food regulations and other things like that, a lot of things that, when it comes to even tariffs, I find that when you look at other countries, they don't have the same kind of regulations and rules that applied to Britain. If you look at regulations on food, Boris Johnson has even joked about it and not stopped to ever take the mick when, for example, on the packaging for fish, it says caution that may be fish. These regulations are very they're obvious a lot.
Yeah.
But the thing that I have about tariffs and the things that I have a lot about jobs is that the main thing when it comes to the campaign, when it comes to economics, is that they kind of devoid what actually benefits Britain and what actually matters when it comes to getting more money into Britain and actually getting more people in Britain into work.
Right.
Because we seem to be more fixated on work outside of the EU. And kind of going back a little bit, when talking about trade, the Leave campaign doesn't want to stop all trade. We don't want to say, no more trade. What we're trying to do is we're trying to say that we're fed up of being taken advantage of. We're fed up of putting more money in than what we should be getting out of it. For example, at the moment we have a current business tax of 47% due to the free trade. The businesses outside of the UK aren't taxed as heavily as what they are inside the UK.
Oh, right.
There's also other problems. There's other issues that... Sorry, I kind of lost my trail of thought there.
What you said about that brings me on to my next point, which is one of the main reasons that people want to leave is because of the membership fee. Last year, it says here, UK paid 13 billion into it after rebate. That was so they paid 18 billion in and got 5 billion back. So 13 billion went somewhere. What do you have to say to that, Steve? Where did all that money go?
Well, a lot of that money goes into basically a lot of the European projects. So, as I said, a lot of money does come back into the rebate, as you quite rightly said, to agriculture, into private industries, things like LG when it was here at the point in time. There's development just down the road here with the pill, with the signage and things outside the shops or the displays. That saw a lot of European funding, so it's bits local to home. And there's other bits as well where that it's not equated on the UK budget, to speak of what we gain back, but the UK young people, adult groups, things like that can also apply for exchanges across the European Union Erasmus, things like that. That's not actually accounted for as part of what the UK gets back,
Right.
but it still is part of the contribution that's there, which any person from the United Kingdom can take part in. And I think that is such a fantastic thing,
Yeah.
that we shouldn't be looking at isolation. We should be looking at being bold and getting out there. And, any UK citizen can go across the European Union, as I said, with Erasmus, get free education in Germany.
That's good.
Things like that,
Yeah.
across, because it's the same as every other person of that country. And I think it's such a fantastic thing to do, to explore, get out there, have, we mentioned about the fact of having well-skilled people of this country. I think we need to promote that, but I think we need to be broader and get them, not just here, get them out to explore the world, but bring them back when they're skilled, seeing the world, to tell us what the outside world is doing, to make sure we can bring that back home
Yeah.
and say what we can do and make that effective economy, because we know what the others are doing, so we can do it better.
So it does sound like we get full benefits. Okay, I'll go on to the next part. Immigration. So Steve, many people want to leave because of the fact that UK doesn't have any control over immigration borders, which makes us more likely to have a terrorist attack. What do you say to those people?
Well, I would raise on the thing of terrorism straight away, and I think the huge factor is, as probably aware in the UK, there's been a lot of homegrown terrorism. Now, I think in that part and factor that anything of if we leave or if we don't, basically I don't think that would have any effect on these homegrown terrorism, or terrorists, sorry, in that basis. But I think as a whole that majority of the migrants that do come over here are working migrants.
That's good. Yeah.
They pay taxes, so they put money into the NHS, they put money into local businesses. So they are putting money into the local economy. As said, they're paying the taxes and they're due. Now, I think the other issue is, and that's not raised on the fact is, that European Union migrants aren't actually the biggest migrants to the United Kingdom at all. It's actually from India and China,
Oh, right.
which is outside the European area. Now, in that context, we do have borders and we can assess against those people. And I think that's something that, is to say that we can't, fly in or, access the Eurostar. We aren't confronted by border force, because that's ludicrous.
Yeah.
Of course we're met by the border force. We're not part of the Schengen agreement there. And I think that's one of the things that is forgotten, that we do have borders, we can assess, and if needs be, we work with our European colleagues and say if someone is of risk and share information, which is something that strictly might not even happen on there. But the other thing, if allowed to mention, is the fact that the word of immigration, a lot of people says it burdens the state. So you're having so much people coming in, it's putting strain on the NHS, it's putting strain on social housing. Now, I would dispute that fact on the basis that successive governments, regardless of party, hasn't built enough houses. Now, we've selling off the right to buy, and there's not enough being put back into the place. So yes, there's people in London waiting 12 years for a social house. There's people across Wales, Scotland, etc. The problem is not based on the European Union, it's based on UK level, London politics. And I think that's the exact same with the NHS. So the fact of classifying, this debate of immigration as a huge problem, I strongly feel that we actually need to have a look at this and have a stricter debate on it, but actually look at what these migrants bring to this country. And they, bloody bring a lot.
It sounds like they bring a lot, yeah. El, what do you think?
I suppose going back a little bit, more to the fact that obviously we do have access to get free education, say, from UK to Germany. I think, honestly don't think that if we leave the EU, we will not have visa-free travel, and if we do, visas aren't that expensive. And I don't think that will be overall expensive to travel abroad and actually, get experience from, Germany as that example, and be able to come back with those experiences. And I don't think that it's going to cost too much more than what it would to get the education here in Britain. But as for migration,
should there be a limit? Are we okay with the amount of immigration at the moment?
I don't. The thing is, though, is that we said by 2020. We're saying by 2020, what we're going to do is trying to lower the numbers down to 300,000 migrants coming into the country. With an open border policy, I don't think that's possible, especially when we're introducing countries like Turkey possibly into the EU. But the way I see it is that when it comes to terrorism, for example, the EU has nothing to do with NATO, has nothing to do with the UN. Those are separate to the trade agreement, even if there is an alleged, secret army in the EU that's going to happen or whatever. When you have a lot of these homegrown terrorists as well, I think that, well, for me, I know this from experience and like what I've actually seen. A lot of it does come from radical Islam, and you look at the migrants coming over into Germany, look at the migrants across Europe that haven't yet reached Britain. You look at what types of people we're bringing in, and we're bringing in people with different sets of values, bringing in people with different sets of values and standards, and these people, they don't hold... they just don't hold the same values, and when we expect, them to not, on the night of Cologne, on New Year's, where over 1,000 women were sexually assaulted, they knew what they were doing was wrong. And, there was, screaming anti-Semitic stuff, and also a lot of things that normally, if you were German, you'd be put in prison for years, up to, shouting Hail Hitler and things like that. These people are well aware that what they're doing is wrong. And when you're bringing in 1.2 million migrants into Germany like that, you have to expect to have all variety of different types of people. And when you have the media, especially leftist media, they report a lot of the people that are hard done by, women and children starving, and it's getting to the point now where it seems that immigration has kind of got to, well, they've made the journey, might as well let them in, which I disagree with that. As for people actually coming into the country, yes, there are people coming in from India and China. But there's also the problem that a lot of these migrants are also not really educated. A lot of migrants that actually do come in aren't really people that would go for high-paid work, higher-class jobs, or middle-class jobs. It's already hard enough as it is for under-30s to get into the working class. With this influx of migrants coming in every single year and taking the lower-end jobs, it is harder and harder for our own citizens under 30 to get into work. And this is a big problem. And it's also a massive problem because we're already suffering and trying to get people encouraged into going into business, trying to get loans, trying to get in, be risky, and actually try and take the risk to try and set up shop themselves. Because you have, for example, in Newport, we spent £10.8 million on buying corporate businesses. And we've done this before. We've done it in Kingsway. It wasn't successful. I don't think this is going to be successful. It's trying to make Newport more sexy. But I don't think that it'll work, because at the end of the day, we're not getting more working class people into work. We're just getting a few hundred jobs for a few hundred people. It's not actually putting meals on to play for.
Do you agree, Steve?
On some of the comments, basically,
it certainly seems like immigration doesn't benefit us as much.
No, I think it does. And as I said, there's been various newspaper clippings and things like that online that people can research this. The fact that we have migrants makes our economy bigger, not smaller. And I think there is a lot of jobs there. Yes, there's a lot of low-skilled people within the UK as abroad, but they're coming in, and there's actually a lot of European funding going into these areas, such as Merthyr, such as a lot of the valleys, Rhondda and Taff, things like that. Jobs Growth Wales is jobs put in with money shared, yes, by the Welsh Government, but also huge amounts of millions of pounds through, obviously, European funding. And that's trying to get people in to get those experiences in. And to signify on another level, the mention of Turkey. Now, hopefully, as my learned friend knows, the Armenian genocide is something that is ripe as an issue across European countries. Now, many countries, France included, would use their veto against Turkey. I can't see Turkey getting in the next century on the basis that they still refuse to this day of their actions of what they've done. Right. And that is one of the conditions to be able to access, obviously, the European Union. Yes, we as a European Union, we might be friends with them, but to signify friends and actual members are two different things.
Right.
Yeah. I think with having more migrants in, this is a point that you also made when we're not actually having enough homes. And what a problem I have with Sadiq Khan, the new mayor of London, is that he seems to have a kind of prejudice against people who aren't Muslim. And this isn't me trying to obviously be anti-Muslim or anything, but okay. What even people, a lot of progressives you find, and a lot of people on the left seem to ignore the fact that we have a huge problem of white males, especially as they get older. You know, you have 50-year-old white males out on the streets and they're homeless. We have a load of homeless men of this country, of origin of Britain, and you know they can't get a home. They can't get any support. You know, what are we supposed to do about those people? You know, if you come into the country, you can seek asylum, get a home instantly. Why are white males not being treated the same as others?
That's a good point. Yeah.
And another point I want to make as well is that I don't really care for what France has to say, because in a tabloid I read the other day, what they were saying was that if we do leave the EU, they will happily allow migrants from coming over from Syria to come into the UK through the Channel unchecked for weapons or anything, possibly causing terrorist attacks and other things. And you know, to say something like that rather passively has quite a passive-aggressive annotation to it, which kind of means that that has to kind of go provoked not to check someone for weapons if you're allowing them to go from one country to another.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back to the homeless thing, what do you think about that, Steve? Because that's a big issue that a lot of my friends bring up.
And essentially people bring up the fact that soldiers on the streets and things like that as well come back. Now, working with a lot of people that work within charities in this sector, there's huge amounts of charitable support out there, huge amounts, and they do help a lot of people. But unfortunately, due to certain issues, mental health, one of them, people stay on the streets. It's not the fact that they can't find homes, it's the fact that some of them do not wish to receive the support. There's other issues factoring in as well.
Okay.
And I think that there's other things that we need to put in place, work with these charities to try and get these people off the street, of course, but I think that's one of the things that we really need to have a look at, as a whole. And if they were willing to receive the support, a lot of them would be housed.
Yeah. I know there are what are they called?
Hostels and things.
Yeah, hostels. I know they say there are enough beds for everyone in Newport and the whole of UK. So
well, that's even the thing about hostels. I mean, you look at Germany, what happened. I mean, like if we offered hostels for homeless white men in Britain, I'm pretty sure they'd be happy to take it. I mean, most of them are begging for money on the streets. You look at Germany, for example, when they had the migrants and they built hostels for them, they burnt down the buildings. I think that's a complete separation of difference.
Right.
Where one actually wants help and one just wants to watch something burn.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I got another point here for you, Al. David Cameron has said recently that if we stay in the EU, concessions he's won will allow him to reduce immigration, as new arrivals will receive a lower rate of child benefits. What do you think of that? Do you think that's a good thing?
To be honest,
like what you're saying, when immigrants come here and they can get housed straight away, I think what that means is it's going to make it a bit harder to get benefits.
Yeah, there's been the talk of, obviously, you have to be in the UK, I think, wasn't it a year?
It's they're trying to get 3 years, but it's a year. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was supposed to be what it was. But the thing is, though, is that there's been a lot of cuts, and it also comes down to social and healthcare in local councils. You have the socially disadvantaged and people with, autism, Asperger's, Down syndrome. These people that do need help as well, especially, even children, even single mothers, because, we have a lot of single mothers in places like Newport, trying to keep it relevant, I guess. But, even in smaller towns and cities, you do have a lot of mothers that's, singly bringing up, 2-3 different children. And it's hard, especially with these cuts, that, because you'll find that, mental illness is something that we're trying to, overcome especially in children where we have like the rise of things like ADD, ADHD, trying to get help. And I don't think these cuts, even help, the most basic of, these families up until the, more older socially disadvantaged.
Yeah.
And these cuts don't only just end at, the councils. It's also the NHS with a lot of nurses, obviously having their wages cut, and they're working extraordinary hours, even the doctors. And I think that if you're not being paid, what you're earning, then I can imagine that a lot of these people in the health industry. feel very demotivated,
Yeah.
feel very unappreciated.
Yeah.
And it's it brings down your mentality. But I think that for a lot of people in the NHS who are working in hospitals, I think a lot of it comes down to a moral high ground that they have to work.
Yeah.
And I think that's being taken advantage of.
Yeah, go on, Steve. I know you're itching to talk. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, obviously just touched on something quite important there, actually about the wages side of things.
Right.
And the reason why benefits are there is in place of a security net for those that, extremely need it. So when we physically look at that factor, we can have a look at, all employers. How much are they actually physically paying people? There's issues where, people on benefits being used as basically slave labour. And there's been cases proving that fact. And bring that in, if that's what we have for the UK level, what do we expect these migrants to have? If we actually have well-paid jobs that we can for everybody, not saying that it should be paid the same or regardless of that, what I'm actually stipulating is everyone should be able to have a job that's paid enough so they can actually live. And rather than this governmental living wage, an actual living wage that they can afford this childcare, being able to afford the bills, food, rather than relying on a lot of things which a lot more people recently have had to use, such as like the food banks, for example. There's such a usage now that's gone up like threefold, since the current government is in, and there's a lot of factors like this that wouldn't actually be utilised if it wasn't for the fact that we resolve things on the London level, in order to put things right and order to pay people what they should be earning. But the other factor I would link into this, and quite rightly the NHS staff, as someone that does a lot of spare time community work, providing first aid cover in my community, I work alongside foreign nationals, most of them from the European Union, and a lot of them nurses, doctors, that we as Britain actually go out to the rest of the world, and most of them are from India, China, I said already, but a lot of them also come from Eastern European countries that are skilled, and as bad as it sounds, we're nabbing them from being skilled in their country to be where we need them, because of course the size and scale of the NHS and the demands, we still have a lot of vacancies, huge amounts of vacancies that we can't fill. So in the lower levels, there's a lot of jobs for skilled people on all levels, from UK and abroad. We just have to try and fill them, is the problem.
Yeah.
See, I agree and disagree, because when it comes to benefits, I think that we should be kind of introducing a plan like Germany is doing. And what we're doing is basically, instead of allowing people to just come in straight away, they're on a probation for a year with a probation visa. And depending on how they are, depending on how they live in the country, then we allow them in for another year, and then so on and so forth. But this doesn't actually say that they don't get benefits. What I'd be more interested in is looking at the numbers of the people who are actually using the NHS at the moment, because what you'll find, you look at the media and everything, they report loads of sick children, sick women, sick migrants everywhere, and this is something that also came to America that was poorly reported, and that's that when they actually got to America, nobody was interested in what they were actually doing. They were like, oh yeah, we feel good about ourselves, but they didn't take into account that the migrants that it took over, which was 22 million. Missouri, 300,000 of them were actually diagnosed with tuberculosis. These are problems that we should be looking ahead towards, because if we're allowing all these sick people in for a start, there's obviously the chance of an outbreak. And, things like tuberculosis, we don't want, obviously, in Britain. I mean, people even freak out about E. coli. Obviously that was contained by one person. But even then, we understand that there obviously is detrimental value to the fact that we can't just allow people who may be possibly diseased, possibly ill, to just come in without some kind of check.
So should we not take people in if they're too sick?
See, the thing is though, is that we have a lot of charities out there, and we have a lot of the government does quite a bit as well. To actually help people who obviously come over and are ill. This isn't something, we hear about it on the news, people always asking to donate, for example, Syrian water. What I think what we should be doing is that when we look at these numbers, we should technically treat every single person the same. And it's that just because they made the journey doesn't mean that we should just let them in. And the thing is that you look at things like, when Germany invaded Britain, we didn't run to Germany for help. It's like, why are they running to us? What do they actually expect? And
maybe a point I'm going to bring up for Steve is: do you think we're too soft when we let people in? Like we said earlier, when people seek asylum, do we just let them in without checking them, without thinking about the numbers?
No, I fully disagree, actually. There's a lot of levels where asylum seekers are brought in and you think they're in a nice plush home. Actually, a vast majority of them are kept in prison cells. Swansea is one of them, for example, which has housed quite a lot of them while their applications are undertaken.
Oh, right.
And so basically you've got to, as you probably imagine, there's a lot to look at, things like LGBT section, things like, about war-torn countries, about going back. Is it actually going to harm you if you go back to the home country? And I think there's a more obligation that we should be part of the network to house them. But I think that is something that as European Union that we're trying to work and balance out a level as a whole. And I don't think to signify an agreement that was made basically recently as European Union with the migrants saying distribute around, I think that's fair because a lot of migrants tend to go to various countries because they feel closer bonds with it. So a lot of them may come to Britain because of the nature of English language, the fact that obviously our ethics are slightly similar in some ways in some countries, and there's certain like families are moving here, things like that. So there's all different perspectives there, but it's not an easy ride. It never is an easy ride for asylum seekers, and I think that's the one thing. So migrants is one of the things, yes, we should be judging against migrants for what they can bring to this country, but asylum seekers is completely different and something that we really need to focus on and have a moral debate about it. But I think it's something that we need to be very cautious about the two.
Yeah, I suppose people don't think about, when they just see a number, they don't think about the amount of people who are ill, they don't think about the amount of people who are in the prisons, like you said. But be honest, do you think we should have more of a limitation, whether we stay in the EU or not? Do you think we should have more of a limitation on immigration?
As immigration, I think outside of the European debate, I think we actually officially need a full-on debate about immigration in this country. And I think that should be put to everyone because we are seeing polar opposites of Britain first at one point, and obviously you've got various others on the left-wing side of things, completely, extreme left-wing.
Right, yeah, different debate, yeah.
So I think we need to have that as important for the future.
We'll leave that for a different radio show then.
Can I make one last point?
Yeah, okay then, yeah.
I think what we have to do is we have to look at Germany, because Germany is the one that's suffered most publicly known and the most at the moment. We've seen how integrating and trying to be multicultural has not worked. Yeah. We know that when you integrate certain cultures from the Middle East and you bring them over into the westernized countries, you have a completely set of different values and morals, and blindly, bringing these people in the name of progressivism, you expect these people to act a certain way. People don't, just because you say one thing, it doesn't, actions speak differently. They always do.
Go on, Steve, you're shaking your head.
I think there's a lot of factors there, and it derives from after the Second World War. I think this country, when we brought people from Africa, Caribbean, India, people to fill a lot of the jobs, it's like, oh great, you're of this community, you'll be put here.
Right.
We haven't properly, moved people around, to actually integrate. You can go in some places in Wales, and it's all white.
Yeah.
Things like that. And those that are in these areas are going to be more racist, a proven fact, and also a lot more scared of the fact of what they may bring.
That's
but if you actually look at it, there's a lot of, obviously, in the community in Newport, they are what they are, but they're also British, they're also Welsh.
Yeah.
They share in a lot of the culture. They're a subgroup in our society that we should integrate, but we should also be proud that we, as Britons, that we actually have something that we share identity, that we're happy to open world. Britain was out in the world at one point, so it's great to have let's receive as well. Let's see some of the culture. Some of it we already have in words like shampoo from India and things like that. But some of the things like let's bring some back, but not to I'm not saying go mad.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's good to have that experience for everyone in this country rather than obviously everyone being the same and having this different, because that's what makes us unique. That's what makes us different, and something that can be brought into businesses, things like this, to bring in that entrepreneurism. And I think that's one of the things that is so important, to be different.
That's a very positive way of seeing it. On to the third and final part now. Jobs. So it says here, this one's for both of you. Pro-EU campaigners have said that 3 million jobs depend on our membership to the EU, and they could be lost if we leave. However, no one is able to find proof of this definitely happening, so I wanted to ask you both, is this true?
Do you want to go first? Or?
Yeah, okay.
So a lot of politicians I've realised in their speech have said 3 million jobs depend on it.
It's 3 million directly.
Right.
So there's a lot of indirect jobs as well in there. When you look at companies like Airbus, that's across the whole, of Europe, like Germany, France, North Wales, and in England as well. There's parts of it as well. I think as a whole, there's a lot of multinationals that will pull out quite quickly. Various banks, various industries. A lot of banks, for example, will go to Luxembourg. Very similar basis to the City of London, and because of the fact that where we are, we're special relationship with a lot of the world, and the fact that we're in the European Union, we place such a benefit to a lot of the a lot of the people in this country. A lot of people would lose out completely on the basis of being able to jump on the train for meetings to France, vice versa. You utilise this as a part of it because it would be harder for the basis of the work levels, the visas, everything else potentially what could happen.
There's a lot to consider.
There is a lot to consider. But I think we forget in the wider picture of who are we and what are we connected to.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we really need to focus on.
So 3 million is accurate, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the thing about 3 million in jobs being lost is, in a way, hyperbolic. Because when you look at it, you look at, for example, Germany, you look at, companies in France, why would businesses want to lose out on our input? Because at the end of the day, we are 8% of the EU's income. And, when people talk about visas and things like that, people seem to forget that, back before the 1970s, that, visas weren't exactly hard to get hold of. Being able to travel from one country to another wasn't exactly difficult. Anyone could do it. You just pick up a visa and you go. And I think that, if you look at countries like Turkey, they can get visa-free travel. Why can't we? I don't see why, one country can have something but we can't because we left a simple trade agreement.
Yeah.
And I think that would also be beneficial to the EU as well, to get visa for certain countries to get visa-free travel as well. And I don't think that really we're going to lose any friends. I think at the end of the day, we are Europe, and we were united after the war. And we still have NATO, still have the UN. I don't think that the EU is really going to be, the end-all of friendships. I don't think it's like Facebook where you unfriend someone. I mean, we still have them on Twitter and Tumblr if that's so.
I see what you're saying, yeah. But 3 million, like how...
I don't think so.
What do you think about that?
You look at Germany, for example. They're already preparing for a Brexit. They're already preparing to make a new trade deal, and that's because they want to keep us. And when we have so many countries making a lot of their money, a lot of their income that they can't afford to lose from Britain, I don't think that they're just going to go, well, sorry, you're not part of this trade agreement. I don't care.
That's a good point.
But if you look at the timeframes that in between, in short term to long term, a Brexit would mean a lot of uncertainties. A lot of trade deals take many, many years to be able to tailor to. And if you look at things like, various places like Canada, looking at New Zealand and being able to trade with the European Union, I think that's some important things there. And the fact of China, and the fact that there's many jobs that are linked in because of the fact that we can lead the debate. Britain is one of the biggest contributors, yes, but it is one of the biggest, obviously, within the G7 as well. And it would be bigger than Germany in a couple of years. And this is where we can use our influence as part of this European Union to be able to utilise the markets abroad within the European Union, and also home on to that and showcase our best practice, but utilising it as well. And I think that's where we need to be, is if we want, as within Britain, to look at the wider world, how can we, as like small and medium-sized businesses as well as large businesses, start on the local level and think, actually, you know what, this is doing really good. I might go to France, I might go to Ireland, I might go to one of the other nations.
Yeah.
And I think that is so imperative that we can really open access to.
See, I don't agree with that at all, actually.
Okay.
I do and I don't. It's kind of weird. And that's mainly because I don't think anyone really has any money. And it's, when you actually look at people, they are very fed up. And we've been fed up since the credit crunch. And what we want is we want change now. We don't want to wait a few years. We want to wait, for the EU to start kicking in. We don't want the TTIP. We don't want anything like that. What we want is something straightforward, and we want it, to be independent again. We don't want to be part of some super state either. And, I think that, when Obama came over and he was talking about, the EU should be all together, it's almost like he wants all his eggs in one basket. I don't think Obama or the US would ever want to be, part of some kind of superstate or
United States of America. You had 13 original states when they started.
Yes, but they are a country. They are united under one. And the point is that I don't think that they would want to be, something that doesn't put them first. They wouldn't want to be on top, not on top. And, I don't think Obama really has much of a say when it comes to a superstate.
Right.
I think Britain has always been courageous. I think Britain has always been, the working mentality that is driven us further than any other. I mean, you look at the Second World War, Germans built bombs from scratch. We were building them from scraps, basically. You look at the differences. We adapt to what we have, and if we adapt with Brexit, I think that we will go further than what we will in the EU.
Okay. I've got some questions from viewers, so we're just going to answer those now. Ian says, how would leaving the EU affect holidaymakers?
That's one of the things. It's a hard one to navigate at the second because we still don't know fully about the visa situation, things like that. Low-cost budget airlines is going to be one thing that's hit. Looking at the roaming charges, so when you go abroad, how much is it going to cost you to make that call back home, send those pictures back home, get on Facebook, get on Twitter, look at this beach I'm on and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be one of the things that we really have to concentrate on. But I think it's just the ease of access. People, it's not just about the holiday side of things. There's people living abroad, working in London from Spain. British people living because it's cheaper in Spain, things like that. So, in a way, it's a holiday because they go back to a holiday if you want every night. But it's one of those weird kind of things that the way that we have adapted as Europe, I think, would affect the way that we are being able to be mobile, and we will become very Iceland again. I think we will start to be very UK bound again, and I think that would be something negative. And I think as a whole, we need to have these low cost events for young people, for people are a disadvantage in society, because seeing the world opens their eyes to what's out there. It's not just about what's on their doorstep. I can tell you, people from some areas in Betis have never been outside Newport or Cardiff. So to see the world and to see Europe is widen their their expectations and to build up their the whole thing, and that would only be part of the coin.
So leaving the EU wouldn't affect this in a bad way? Going on holiday and stuff?
I think it would have huge effects.
I don't think so. It's like I said earlier, people seem to forget that, visas are a thing. I mean, Europe's not really a big place. If you really think that Europe is, the big world, then, you really do have quite a small world. And to say that, you can go from, your actual work life to a nice holiday home in Spain at the end of the day, I don't think that applies to many people. I actually think that applies to more people who actually have a lot of money. And to be fair, a lot of people don't have money. And, to say that to a demographic, especially under 30s who are not even in the working class, I think that's kind of... It's a misdirection. It doesn't really apply to anyone. I think that the main thing is that nobody has any money, and that's the problem. People want money. People want to do things. People want to live. They want to go somewhere. And what I think about low even roaming, roaming's not really a thing. I mean, do people really care much for roaming? I mean, on everyone's package plan nowadays, everything's international. You can you pay £30 a month. You got unlimited text, internet. There's the actual Wi-Fi on the places that you go to as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really limiting. I think for a lot of it, we're not really as limited as people would think.
Yeah.
I think it's just that a lot of the more younger generations aren't really used to that. They're not used to the fact that at one point you did have to have a visa to go to Germany, and even then it wasn't that expensive.
I think cost-wise, though, and the bureaucracy behind it is going to limit it. I think it's really going to have a major effect.
Okay. Let us know what you think of these questions, by the way, and these opinions. To me, it seems like whether we leave or not, if you can afford to go on a holiday, you'll go on a holiday. If not, then not. That's what it seems like to me. Kim asks, what will happen if we stay in the EU and then in the future wealthy European countries leave? How will that affect us financially? If we stay, and then in the years to come, other wealthy countries as part of the EU leave?
I don't know, because like, you look at, for example, Greece, because they want to exit, and they're not a wealthy country. You look at, Germany, like, I don't know, I can't really imagine them leaving, but if they did, I suppose it would be the same situation as Britain. They want to become more independent and trade with the EU on their own terms instead. I think that's what it's really about with Britain. We want our own terms. We want to do things our way. We want to stop taxing our own businesses and scaring them off to other countries. We don't want, we want a flat tax for a start. I mean, 47% is almost 50%. It's ridiculous. Should be, 40 should at least be what it is. And the Tories lying about that, and obviously, I think we'll agree, Osborne lying about a lot of things. These problems, I think, really. I don't know. I think they're more of the
it's a tricky one
than anything.
It's like being asked to predict the future. That one.
It is, but I think as a whole, as said earlier, the UK is one of the biggest countries. So I think, in comparison to like the Greek example, Greece is one of those players that, in theory, shouldn't have joined the Eurozone at that point. There's a lot of other issues focusing on that, but I think as a country that's bigger and one of the biggest in the European Union, I don't think will be hit as hard on that basis in comparison to the likes of Ireland, which is a smaller nation, like Italy is struggling at the moment, Spain, even though they're strong economies. I think as a whole it's not as big and strong as us and Germany in this instance, and France and the like. I think there's, like, if it was one of the Eastern European countries that left, it would hit us, but it wouldn't be like a tsunami.
Okay. Dale asks, will pizza be free? I'm not sure if that was a joke.
Well, everyone likes
pizza
pizza and politics.
Will the cost of pizza change if we leave the EU?
Interesting question. If it's homemade, probably not. If you're getting it from Italy, well, there might be a charge.
Good point.
Honestly, I think, you got to be that one guy who just kind of gets really excited. You get an order from number 10, and you're like, oh, it's 10 Downing Street. You run down there, give them the pizza, and you realise there's a camera behind the door.
Oh, okay.
And the cat.
Yeah. Fez asks, why are British immigrants called expats? Expats is apparently a shortened name for that. Does anyone know why they're called that?
It's basically they go abroad from like retiring and things like that. It's just the nature of the person's status.
Right.
It just means they've left this country for a period of time. So they live in Spain, Portugal, France, all the rest of it, but they're away from their home. I don't know if all expats can vote. I think there's a 15-year limit, but I don't know if that's the certain time frame. I'm not sure if that is an effect of when they're classified as that.
Okay. He also asks, why are we having a referendum? Why now?
I guess it's more the fact that we had the referendum for Lisbon joining, and that was where it first started off.
I think that basically there's been a lot of changes, and I think, like in the Republic of Ireland, they've had referendums on various things as well. But I think as a whole, I think this referendum, in personal level, it is very poorly timed. It's basically to equate for internal politics, a lot of it. Right. So basically, the country has changed. There's been a lot of discussion. There's been a rise of certain political parties out there, which is obviously calling on this. And of course, then you've got various civil war in another party, which is signifying. So you're having a split there. And I think that's why, with the majority the government currently has, they're kind of raising it and bringing it this way. But I think the timing frame is that it's actually now in June rather than next year when we actually hold the presidency of the European Union. Right. So at that point it would be untenable to actually have any discussions or any link there when we would be leading the forum.
All right. Good answer.
I think with the there's nothing I could really add to that.
Okay.
I'll leave that one.
Also, Fez asks, if we leave the EU, how will new UK legislation be written?
See, this is the question that's uncertain for myself. Now, I did public policy as a master's, so I've done this way.
Right.
But if we still trade with the European Union, we still might have to pay costs into the European Union in order to trade with them. Which means, in the Norway situation, if we, that's one example, we may still be bound by European laws, regardless of the fact, but we wouldn't have a seat on the table to make any type of improvements or changes, or be able to complain properly about them.
Right.
I think that's going to be one of the major things. Yes, we can make law, but it might be contravening our ability to be able to trade with Europe.
Yeah. Will it be easier to write law or harder if we leave?
Easier. I mean, it's under our own terms. The thing is that, like, the EU, all the regulations and everything, I don't think that we're really going to change too much to the point where they won't want to trade with us.
Right.
And I think that what we really want is that we want it on our own terms, because we want to be paying for what we're actually paying for. We don't want to be paying more than what we're not getting. And I think where we have a lot of businesses coming in and trading with this very trade deal, a lot more money is going into the EU than what it should be, and what we really want is some of that money to actually stay in the UK, so we can actually use that on ourselves and be more self-sufficient, like I said.
But on that question, there is a question that in West Wales is some of the most deprived areas of the whole of the European Union, and you've got London and South East, which is some of the most richest areas of the European Union as well. There's such a vast difference of the different natures, and we're one country, and a lot of it says we'll bring it home. I don't think a lot of levels we will.
I think a lot of that is more to do with the Tories privatising a lot of land, from my understanding.
Right.
Because obviously the public has paid for it, and then goes by the Tories have privatised it and then sell it off, and it's usually 10 times the amount that the public have actually paid for. It's for example, there was a thing about it similar to in Scotland, where there was a whole thing about Donald Trump buying a whole patch of land that was privatised. And turned it into a massive golf course. I mean, things like that where other countries can meddle with UK land. I don't think that should really be. I don't think that should be a thing.
But on that level, you're talking about like London, for example, the Saudi Arabians and whatnot, like the Arab states, Americans, things like that. So it's not just the European Union; it's the fact that other countries are pouring absolute billions of pounds, buying properties, even have the royal family in there helping and support them. So it's a bit dubious.
To be honest, I don't think any country should be buying our land. I think that once you do that, you start to get into different realms, and it makes things more expensive than what they should be for a start. I don't think that it should be out of the realms of the public, especially if you have more wealthier middle class people trying to buy things and they're unable to even survive in an apartment in London. But I don't think that it should be private.
Okay. Right.
I think as a level, saying about the UK, just touching on that point, pays in a lot more than it gets back.
Right.
I might have to remind, obviously, those listening, that the fact that Wales gets a lot more than it puts in. Right. I think that's such an important factor that we benefit hugely in comparison to the rest of the UK.
That sounds like a good arrangement to me.
Yeah, the main problem with that is that the Welsh Assembly doesn't really do anything with it.
Okay.
There's a lot of problems with the Welsh Assembly in itself. Like the thing about the EU is that it's not only a problem with the EU. Is we have obviously internal problems that kind of go together, if that makes sense. So it's obviously, you can't just blame everything on one thing. There are a load of different variants to why certain things aren't going where they should be. And I think that really the Welsh Assembly does have quite a bit to answer for as well, because it doesn't really go back.
Okie dokie. Next question. Last question actually. If we stay, how do we go about reforming or making a say of changes to the EU? So, how will we adapt if we do leave? Will it be easy at first? Will it be easy overall? Will it be beneficial straight away or the long term?
I think long term definitely beneficial.
Okay.
But I am not going to be disingenuous. It's definitely going to be hard. But then again, I think it's also hard being in the EU. especially with Britain being having a lot forced upon it as well. It was in the booklet thing that you get through your letterbox.
Oh, right, yeah.
Saying that we're one of the countries that got into the EU not by open borders, not by paying in money to actually be a part of it, and all the things that was suggesting that yes, when the EU did start, we didn't have to do those things, but now we do. Times have changed, and they're not as applicable as what they are now. Like with the referendum, David Cameron was saying how he was, for Brexit, but then later on said that he wasn't. And it's kind of a thing that I call Cameron's bluff, because it is a bluff. And now his bluff is being called out. I don't think that the EU really will live up to what it's promised. It's undemocratic for a start,
right.
And that's probably why.
Okay. That reminds me of something I wanted to bring up. Scaremongering. It seems like the Remain campaign is based on fear of loss of jobs and unemployment, loss in economy and stuff. What do you say to that, Steve? Because that's what puts people off.
The thing that I have is that most people, like if you look at scientists, economists, and various others, are in the In campaign. And I believe that both arguments haven't been as best as they could. I think there is polar opposites of each other, and you're trying to persuade the middleman, as to speak.
Right.
And I don't think that's being committed as well. But I think that sometimes falls on the back that we've just had an assembly election here in Wales and various local elections, and have to try and go out back on the doors to really speak to people.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've had enough education, enough debate, awareness raising of the issue. So I think that the fact that all these statements and stuff, some of them are unwelcome, definitely across the board, and it's not just within, it's without as well. But the one thing that gets me, obviously as an In supporter, is the fact that a lot of the out campaigners can't back up a lot of things. It's like the In debate obviously mentions something, and then you have the out debate is like, oh, blah blah blah, but they've got nothing to back it up with at all. There's no figures, no facts. Where did you get that statement from? And I think it's that forum as well. It is, there needs to be a actual proper debate, but I think I think to look in contrast, using the Scottish referendum for example, they had huge amounts of the population vote, young people included, some of the most hardest people to reach in our society to vote. And I think that's something that we really needed to look at, I think, both sides of the debate. And I don't think that we've really enthused a lot of people, because it's the same arguments being distributed day in, day out.
It's not been a very organised campaign, is it? Not like when we elect a Prime Minister.
Well, we don't directly elect a Prime Minister. Obviously, we directly elect our MPs,
right? Yeah. Who
obviously form the Parliament and the government. And I think it's one of the things that maybe, do we have too many elections? Are people tired of these type of things?
Yeah.
But I think it's just the fact that we have lost the enthusiasm. I think it's voter fatigue, if you want, or the ability for people to actually go out and say, where can I personally find information that's not of one side to the other? Because it does feel, in some degrees, with talking to friends, talking to family, things like that, they're absolute polar opposites to each other, and it's tit for tat both sides, but we're not actually talking to the actual physical middleman and saying, look, this is why we are. And I think we're forgetting the point that it's all these facts and figures, but people at the day want to home in and say, how does it affect me? How does it affect my pocket? How does it affect my family? And I don't think that's been done well enough.
I think politics is actually quite different. I think there is a lot of enthusiasm. It's just that the In campaign doesn't see it. And the thing about the In campaign is that it follows what the Tories haven't done. You look at, for example, the grassroots out movement, and you had delegates actually going out, even from newspapers, and actually talking about things. And I suppose more on a conservative level. Even the Labour Leave were more conservative in what they were, more centralist or libertarian left. And the thing is that you have a lot of people as well on the In campaign that are on the left, and the majority of them are on the left, And it's not to bash the left or anything, but the problem with the left is that they don't really get rid of a lot of their delegates who aren't really that good. They keep everyone in because they want to get as many people as possible because they believe in numbers. What it actually kind of makes more of a mumbo-jumbo nonsense. And that's why you have kind of a segregated Labour at the moment, where you have more of a socialist Labour on Corbyn's side and then more of a centralist or libertarian Labour with Labour Leave. And, you know, you even have, for example, the alleged 2.2 million voters of Labour have gone over to UKIP. And, you know, that's been very evidential, considering they won 30% of the votes in Newport. You know, you look at these... You look at a lot of what's actually being said, and you look at more libertarian conservatives, and a lot of what they do is try and push out the bad eggs. You know, we've even seen this with UKIP. You know, a lot of people compare UKIP to BNP, but if you look at the BNP, they were actually racist. Look at UKIP, respectable people, and they do push out those with those kind of more, you know, progressive views. But at the same time, on the left, you do have a lot of progressives as well. And
shaking your head again, Steve. What do you want to say?
Well, I was just saying about UKIP being respectable. I'm sorry. Literally, looking at the various people that's been elected into the Assembly, various things that they've already said within the first opening days, I think looking at various people, the comments they make about women, comments they make about the disabled, I think in society, I think is downright wrong. And I think that it basically goes back to
what
the old
things have
school
they actually
rhetoric.
said about the disabled?
Well, basically, a lot of them should be killed. They have no use in society. People have been suspended, yes, from the party for statements like this, and councillors in Cornwall and various others. And I think to have comments like this from people, and it seems to be the same clump, and I think that is the problem. And when I can't put the two together, unfortunately, respectable in that party, I'm sorry.
But the thing is, though, is that when you say, you know, misogynistic or socially disadvantaged people should be killed, a lot of these people have been suspended and removed. You know, if they allowed them to stay in, then obviously then they'd be representative, but they're not representative. And I think that's, you know, in a way, it's disingenuous to say that it is representative, because it's not. You know, I've actually spoken to UKIP members. I've spoken to a lot of the members. You know, they've come over from Labour, they've come over from the far left, or even Tory. You know, you have a variety of different eggs. And I think when you're establishing a new party, you're definitely going to have a lot of time going into a new party to actually establish who is what they actually are and what they actually stand for. And I think Farage actually does a really good job. You know, I think the party, you know, I've spoken to the delegates, spoken to the people there, and they are genuine people, and all they want is they want business, they want work, they want, you know, actual equality for once.
Yeah.
You know, because I think what the left likes to ignore is the fact that working class men at the moment are under attack. They're attacked by left, right, and centre. You know, even by feminists. You know. And when you have you know, all these different types of elements always being portrayed in the media, you know, oh, this is bad, this is good, this is bad, this is good. There's no ever grey. You know, people always want things in black and white. They're not you know, ready to accept the fact that things are actually quite grey. You know, things aren't just one thing or another. You know, at one point I didn't really like UKIP because, you know, looking at it, I thought, nah. But you know, when you actually get to know the party, you actually look at the policies, you look at what is actually going on in that group, you realise that the media is actually lied.
Right. Well, that's going a bit off topic. That's, yeah. Are you know, sorry. Are you KIP? Ow! Sorry about that. I pressed a button. Are you KIP, are they in or out?
Out, obviously.
Okay.
UK Independent
Actually,
Party kind of in there.
strangely, there's one MEP that's using the European Union for defence, being a parliamentarian. So if she, interesting case that she doesn't believe the UK law courts is, suitable for her.
All right.
So yeah, she's hiding behind the European Parliament.
Which member is she?
Good point. Can't remember the name off the top of my head. Come back to me in 5. I might remember.
That's okay. Anyway, thanks for a very informative debate. I hope we've helped the listeners know what's going on both sides. So yeah, thanks for coming and listening.
Your city, your sound, Newport City Radio.